When it comes to self-development and integration, no matter the method you use, the vital point is to practice. Welcome back to the Vital Point podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Schecter. This is going to be sort of a retro episode. If you've listened to episode 100, I mentioned some of the integration journals, which I recorded and were an idea that I had at the beginning of 2024 to be a little bit more raw and vulnerable and just share more of my process. So there were actually 3 episodes that I recorded earlier this year, and I just threw them up onto YouTube. With the audio part of the podcast, I typically do a little bit more editing and add, the title cards and the theme music and all the things that go into the finished version of the podcast. I just wanted to get these episodes out. And so I threw them up on YouTube, knowing I would always come back to them and put them into the audio only version of the show. So if you only listen to the podcast, you've never heard these before. If you have watched the YouTube videos, then thanks for checking it out again. This first episode, I actually recorded January 1st, 2024. So as of today, it is August 21st. And so, a lot of time has passed. When I went back to listen to the episode, to edit it and create this version that you're about to check out, it was kind of a trip. I was almost laughing to myself of like, gee, I could do an integration episode for this integration episode because, listening to the things that I was talking about and working through and processing, obviously there's been a lot of progress, on some of the things. Some of the things or ideas or goals that I had have completely shifted and changed just based on how the year has gone. But I do think that this still has value, for one, just to listen to the initial message that I had, the things that I was working on. I know that I'm not the only one that is working on these type of things and, struggling with some of the things and the challenges that I talk about in the episode. The second one is just to start to pivot or start to change direction just a little bit for the podcast itself. In my mind, there are some changes that I want to make. And so that I don't completely alienate you or, I guess a different way to say this is, you can't turn an oil tanker very drastically. You have to slowly and gradually change course 1 degree at a time. And really that is my goal here. It's not to create a completely different show, but just to tweak and adjust a few things in the same way that when I started the podcast, it was called One Question Wednesday. There was a certain format and a certain idea in mind, kind of overarching the show. And then as that didn't fit anymore, I updated, I changed it. It became the Vital Point. It became more long format. And, in the last year, the show got much more focused on the psychedelic aspect of personal development and integration. And that is one thing where we're course correcting. It's not that you won't see anything or hear anything about psychedelics, but transformation and self-development is much bigger than just working with psychedelics and plant medicines. And so we're pivoting back, we're pulling back a little bit towards maybe the original course of the Vital Point to be more inclusive about personal development. And in addition, more just vulnerable, and I want to share more about my experience and my journey and the things that that I'm working on with you. And so this episode being the first one of that. Well, there's two other integration journals. I'll get those out amongst some upcoming episodes here. So expect those, and then who knows where it'll go as far as new episodes. But before we jump in, I just wanted to make sure, if you haven't already, please sign up for the email list so that you don't miss any news, any updates, any upcoming events, whether they're in person in Tucson or the online breathwork and coaching and workshops that I've got coming up. So you can go to bluemagicelevate.com. That's bluemagicelevate.com. When you go there, not only will you be able to sign up for the email list, but you'll also get a free guide, introduction to breathwork. You'll receive a 3-week trial subscription you'll receive a 3-week all access pass to the online breathwork community that is Blue Magic Alchemy. And you'll also have the opportunity to learn more and sign up for my current offering, which is Elevate. And if you haven't heard me talk about Elevate, Elevate is an immersion into breathwork and integration. If you're curious about getting into or exploring or just getting more from your work with expanded states of consciousness, not just psychedelics, not just plant medicines, but really encompassing the whole transpersonal and numinous dimension of life, which includes breath work, which includes prayer and meditation and, maybe Kundalini, whatever it is that you are, sort of bridging into that bigger dimension of life with, then Elevate really can help. It's 8 weeks. It's live, recorded as well on Zoom. The first 4 weeks are really skills that we can all benefit from. Things like mindfulness, somatic awareness, using your breath as a connection and a way to modify your nervous system. And then we start to elevate the experience going into the expanded states themselves, giving you this direct experience through breath work of being in an altered state. And then moving into best practices for integration. These are coming from my training in somatic experiencing, in holotropic breathwork, in neurodynamic breathwork. You might say, well, gee, how is breathwork training going to help me with, working in psychedelic states and with plant medicines? Well, if you go to MAPS, which is pretty much the de facto industry leader for psychedelic science. For they're working with the FDA to decriminalize and legalize psychedelic medicines for psychedelic assisted therapy. They go to holotropic breathwork, and really, holotropic breathwork has been studying and exploring expanded states of consciousness through the 60s. It's really the gold standard for psychedelic training. So many of the little companies that are popping up and the training programs that are training you to work in psychedelic states are either directly influenced or borrowing from or integrating holotropic breathwork. So like if you're training to be a MAPS certified psychedelic assisted therapist, you're experiencing holotropic breathwork. So don't discount the connection and the value that breathwork has for working in expanded states of consciousness. I know that it's been incredibly influential to me. So I know that it's going to change your life too. Before we jump in, I'm just going to give you like about 30 seconds or so of one of the past students of Elevate. Don't take my word for it. Like LeVar Burton, listen to, one of the students that's gotten a lot out of the course.
I've recently taken the Elevate Breathwork coaching cohort with Jonathan at Blue Magic Alchemy, and I found it to be tremendously helpful. If you are on the fence or curious about breathwork, this is a great place to start. Since I started practicing breathwork, my life has gotten much, much better. I've been able to achieve a sense of health and wholeness that I did not think was possible. Breathwork is a very, very powerful thing, and it's worth exploring, but it's also very helpful to explore that with a community, with a coach. And Jonathan is a great one. Each week we practice and then we discuss our practice. He helps clarify. We share our concerns, our thoughts. We talk it through. And in doing so, we're able to really get better at it, which also leads to then deeper experiences and more powerful healing. So it's been an amazing experience, and I would highly recommend the Elevate Breathwork coaching cohort with Jonathan.
So remember, go to bluemagicalelevate.com for the email list, for the 3-week trial membership into the breathwork community. You can go directly to bluemagicalelevate.com/elevate to learn more and sign up for the Elevate program. You can also sign up for a free discovery call to chat more with me about it. And the next cohort is starting at the end of September, so there's plenty of time to join. Without further ado, here is the sort of retroactive integration journal, what I was working on in the beginning of the year, and curious to see what your thoughts are on this new format. It's not going to be every episode. It'll be peppered in with what you've come to expect, practices and interviews with other practitioners, but I'm really excited to share a little bit more candidly with you here. So enjoy. Hey, welcome. My name is Jonathan Schecter. I'm a breathwork facilitator, integration specialist, and host and producer of the Vital Point podcast. And welcome to this new series. These are going to be my solo episodes. I think right now I'm calling it my integration journal, and I'm going to explain a little bit of that, like a little bit why I'm calling it that. So today is January 1st, 2024. And if you're like me, everything on your social media that's being sort of pushed to you or recommended is like productivity and New Year's resolutions and New Year, New You, and all the things. And maybe there's some stuff that's a little bit more caring and gentle, like, hey, you don't have to start new goals or pretend like you're going to be a new you to have value or feel like you have everything figured out. All these things, right? There's a myriad of different messages out there. And one of them that stuck out to me because I wanted something to sort of focus my intention into this video and into this integration journal series. And I want this to be different than the Vital Point, where that's a little bit more curated. It's a little bit more long form. These videos might be really short. Some of them might be really long. And so I don't want to go through everything that I want to share with you today. I literally just want this to be the introduction and inaugural episode of the integration journal. Okay. But as I was going through TikTok earlier, I came across something from the Daily Stoic, and specifically from productivity expert Ali Abdaal. And the question that he was asked was, what would you tell to somebody if they said that they wanted to be more productive this year in 2024? And he said, well, it's really just 3 steps, right? The first step is to figure out what your goals are. I would call that getting clarity on what you want, right? The second step is to convert those goals into actionable steps. And then the third step is to schedule those steps, like actually put them on the calendar. To me, what I see there when I hear that is giving myself accountability, building discipline, and having structure around getting from where I am to where I want to be. And I think in a lot of ways, this is aligned with what I teach in my coaching and the sort of the ethos of the Vital Point podcast, which is it doesn't matter what method you're practicing as much as you're practicing something. You're taking action. You know, you don't have to eat the whole elephant today, but you got to take a bite. You got to start somewhere. Otherwise, you're not going to make any progress. And so in a lot of ways in my life right now, in the past, let's go back a step here. In the past, I would have started this year having done a bunch of prep work to figure out that first step, to figure out what my goals are, what I'm happy with, what I'm not happy with, and how I'm going to get to my goals. Or I would be spending a lot of today doing that, right? Like carving some time out to intentionally sit down and think about the year and do a vision board, or I like the mind movies, but, you know, literally sitting down and trying to figure it out, getting that clarity. And I'm not saying that I haven't done any of that, but I'm just going to be honest and say that I don't feel really clear right now. I have some general ideas and I definitely know the direction that I'm moving in. I'm not completely clueless about what I want to accomplish and how I'm getting there. But I also had this moment maybe about a month ago where I sat down and I carved my sort of life into 4 different quadrants: physical health, mental health, my business, and hobbies. And as I sat down and like actually went through each of those areas, I had this moment of clarity, realization, epiphany, whatever you want to call it, that honestly was really uncomfortable. And that was that I'm not really happy in any of those areas right now. And I just want to preface that by saying, like, I could sit down and find gratitude in all 4 of those areas. I am incredibly grateful for what I have in my life, what I've accomplished so far, the things that I'm working on, the things that I plan on working on in this year. But there's also these big gaps to me that I am still working on and that I want to get better in. And one of them is the podcast. And so one of the things that came up was, why don't I do a daily video where I can talk and get better at podcasting, get better at making content? And the other thing that came up was that maybe this is in my head. I'm just going to say that before I say this, that maybe this is all in my head, but I feel like based on the work that I'm doing and the content that I'm putting out around that work as a breathwork facilitator, as a coach, you know, as a podcast host, that I've sort of painted myself into a corner, if you will, with having to assert myself as an expert. Or I guess in my mind, when I come on here and I share, I kind of have this idea that I have to at least seem like I have my shit put together and that I have things figured out. And if you look at most coaches and, you know, experts or people that are trying to sell you something on social media, they're not talking about the things that they're working on as much as they're trying to say, hey, you should buy from me because I am the expert. I do have things figured out. And I really didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something else where I can just be honest and say, you know what? There are these things that I have a lot of training and a lot of experience in. And there are some areas that I am very qualified to teach others. And I probably do know more about than the average person, right? Meditation, breath work, nervous system regulation, starting to get that way around somatic experiencing. Certainly done a lot of inner work and psychedelic integration work with myself and continue to do so. So maybe I know more about that than the average person, but I'm still figuring stuff out. And especially in the last few months, I've hit this area of my life where I've started to see how much I feel like I still have to do. I've found myself in these places where I feel really ungrounded. I feel like, wow, there's a lot to figure out here. There's things that I am working through and working on. And I want to be able to share that as well, not just be like, hey, I'm Jonathan, I'm the expert in what I'm talking about. And so this is a part of that, is just this honest dialogue with you about what I'm working on, what I'm integrating. I also think that this is going to help me in my goal of growing my podcast and being a better content creator and podcaster, because out of, I think we're at 88 episodes of The Vital Point as I'm recording this. Out of those 88, like less than 20% are solo episodes. And I listen to all of my episodes, whether they're with guests or not. And there's times where I am extremely critical of the way that I speak, of using filler words. And I want to continue to get better and progress as a communicator, as a coach, as a host, right? See, I just did it right there, but it's okay. So I remember when I was doing the podcast like last year, and I had this moment. I had recorded a solo podcast, and after I recorded it, and I kept taking these pauses and stuff that I knew I was going to edit out and whatnot. And I was like, wow, why is this so hard? And then I realized, well, okay, 80% of the time, or maybe it was even like 90% then, I'm talking with somebody else. I'm having a conversation. It's a different skill than talking to you by myself, of not having somebody to bounce things off of, right? So I know that if I start making more videos where I'm talking with you and I don't have somebody else to fill the time or the air, then I'm going to get better, right? So this is part of my 3-step process. I'm figuring out what my goals are. I'm still getting clarity on that. And that's one of the things that I want to share with you during this series. And then how I'm going to convert that into actionable steps, because the reality is that I do know what to do. I have a lot of experience as a project manager. It's something that I help people with as a coach. And so it's like physician, heal thyself. And then in a big way, I think that this is honestly something that's going to help me be accountable to build that discipline, to show up here continuously and regularly. Is like, I'm putting myself out there. I'm saying like, hey, this is what I'm doing this year. I don't have everything figured out, but I'm going to be figuring it out. I am figuring it out. And I want to share that in real time. I want to build in real time with you and share that journey with you, not only for you to feel inspired, to feel like, oh yeah, like I'm going through that too, and maybe share my experience and the things that I'm learning along the way, But selfishly, this is also really, really for me. And if other people get value out of it, wonderful. And if not, this is still helping me show up, improve, continue to progress towards the things that I'm working on accomplishing. Right? Because I am still figuring it out. But I don't want to wait until I have 100% clarity. I don't want to wait until I have all the goals written down and everything figured out and all the steps and all the things before I start. That's always been something that I'm learning, that I'm having to remind myself about, and where I feel like I've had the most success is starting before I'm ready. Because the thing about the things that we talk about on the show, as far as personal development, as far as, stepping into the life that you really truly want, or away from the things that you really don't want, is that there's going to be resistance. And it's so much easier to not progress or stay where you are than it is to move through those. And I've always believed that if you wait until you're ready to start, you're going to die not starting. It's not about perfection. It's about taking the step forward. It's about the journey. It's about what you learn as you're taking those steps, right? The growth that you go through. And so, I've been thinking about starting this series now for like a few weeks, and it's been really easy for me to put it off until January 1st. And even today I got up and I'm like, oh, well, should I do this? I don't know if this is going to go in the podcast. Is this going to go onto YouTube? Is this going to go into my social media, content? Like, I got to figure that all out. Am I going to do this every day? What am I going to talk about? Fuck that. I'm just going to do it. Like, I don't need to have everything figured out before I start to move. Right. And so, yeah, here's where we're at. And I appreciate you being here. By the way, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, hit notifications so that you get the new episodes that are going to be coming out. So before I sign off for the day, I just want to share one sort of meta reason of why I'm doing this, like why this is important for me to start and to actually follow through, even without all the clarity that I might want to have before I actually start something. So one of the things that I've been integrating in my medicine work, in my inner work, and just in general in my life is I've been divorced now for 5 years. And the divorce, even though it was really about a year in the making of sort of waking up to the fact that, like, hey, this is irreconcilable and you need to go. The actual divorce itself happened really fast. I left the home that I shared with my ex-wife really fast. And I was in the middle of, full-time job and going to college full-time. And even though I didn't realize it very clearly, I was definitely in a survival mode, trying to just kind of weather that storm. And because of that, I think there are things that I didn't have a chance to grieve. And some of those things are just coming up now. And as those things are coming up, as those things like to grieve are coming up, what's also where the place that I found myself in often is feeling ungrounded. I've often reflected that if I passed myself on the street 5 years ago, I wouldn't recognize myself. I weigh a lot less, even though my weight has continued to fluctuate a little bit. I'm still probably about 20 to 30 pounds less than I weighed when I got divorced. I have a different career. I was working for a Fortune 500 corporate government contractor doing finance and data analytics 5 years ago. I have all different friends, not to mention a different partner. The things that I spend my time doing are completely different. The clothes I wear are different. The food I'm interested in eating is different. I don't drink. So in a way, I feel totally different and like a different person. And I'm still trying to figure out who I am because it doesn't seem like that old person really fits anymore. And at the same time, I've had these experiences, a lot of them in expanded states of consciousness, like breath work or different plant medicines, that have given me much more access to, let's call it a higher self. Let's call it a spark of the divine. Something that transcends the 3-dimension, right? And also, as I've gone through my own, self-healing journey, whatever you want to call it, I've learned a lot about manifestation, and that one of the keys of manifestation is that putting myself vibrationally in the energy of what I want. Like that it's not so much of me saying, oh, this is what I want, and it's so far away from where I am now, as saying like, I already am that person, or I already have that thing, and feeling the emotion, feeling the vibration of having accomplished that, right? Like I already am that person. So just put myself in there and start behaving as such. And so here I am. This is literally a part of that. This to me, sort of the hidden meaning of this video and this series that I'm embarking on is that I want to just start showing up in the way that I envision in my head, and not hold myself back, not get caught up in the smaller self that really doesn't fit the life that I'm living anymore. It doesn't have the same resources that I do. It doesn't have the same practices as I do now. It doesn't have the same feelings, thoughts, or motivations as I have now. And so this is me embodying this new energy. And I appreciate you being here for it. I hope that you subscribe and click the bell so that you get notifications, because this is what 2024 is about for me in a big way, is like me figuring it out in the 3D as I embody as much as I can this higher self that I know I already am. And we're going to figure it out together. And I appreciate you being here. I can't wait to continue to share with you. I got a whole bunch of stuff keyed up that might not have necessarily fit with the Vital Point, but we're expanding, we're growing, and I'm so here for it. And thanks for being here too. So until next time, I'm going to sign off in the same way that I do with the Vital Point, because this is a different part of that Vital Point, which is no matter the method you use, the important thing is to practice. That's the Vital Point.